Welcome to the farm.
Welcome to the farm. I'm Justin, and today we got the Duramax dually out in front of the shop. And about a year ago, I started doing my head gasket replacement on this thing. And I thought today would be good to go through and talk about that a little bit, because I've been getting a lot of views on that whole series, a lot of questions on it. I got a few pages of stuff here we can talk about, like how the truck's performing, what I would have done differently, the things I did that worked really well, what tools did I have to get to do this repair, and do I think it was worth doing the repair myself? So let's go ahead and start getting into it. So the truck's been running amazing since I did the head gaskets. Actually, about 2 weeks after I got this all put back together, I actually hooked up my equipment trailer, did about a 6-hour round trip to go pick up my micro excavator, and the truck ran great. I did pull over a bunch of times just to make sure that I wasn't getting any coolant oil mixing, which I wasn't, making sure I wasn't getting any air bubbles in the coolant reservoir, which I wasn't. The truck ran great. So I'm really happy about that. I don't use this a lot, and I don't use it hard. This is mainly just kind of my weekend driver at this point. I have another small little car that I use every day just to save on fuel economy, because I drive about 45 minutes to an hour every day one way to work. So driving this thing every single day would just suck fuel. So really, I don't use this a lot, but I am happy with how the head gaskets went, and the truck is working great. So I think next we'll start talking about what I wish I would have done differently now that I've done this. And the first thing was, I did not send the heads into a machine shop. I literally just took them off. I left all the manifolds and everything on them, and I ended up just taking a 600 grit big block sander and just kind of sanded down the head surface. After I did that and got the heads back in, I talked to a lot of people, and they said I probably should have sent them into machine shop just to make sure they were all good, in good working order. Now, I know since I've had this truck, I've never gotten this thing really hot, so I wasn't overtly concerned about head warpage or anything like that. And when I did sand the heads, they sanded really smooth. However, I was really nervous about that. I'd spent a lot of time at that point getting this back together, and I was really worried that once I got it all fired up and running, I'd have more head gasket issues and have to strip it all back down apart and cost me double the money. So I got lucky. I didn't send them in. Everything worked out great for me. But if I were to do it again, I would have sent the heads in just for peace of mind. So I think if I were to do this again, the next thing I would do would be look into actually removing the fenders themselves. Now, in the research I've done, it seems like when you take the truck into like a shop or something like that, they actually pull the whole cab off the truck to give you access to everything in the engine, which I will tell you would have made getting at the EGR bolts so much easier. All the exhaust manifold, or not manifold, but the exhaust down tube bolts and all that stuff that we had to take off the head on the back side would have been so easy to get at, and it would have saved me hours of work. I don't know how hard it is to remove the cab, but I couldn't do that here. I don't have anything to actually lift the cab off, and I'm doing this in my driveway, which is again why I left the fenders on. I wanted to keep the whole truck protected from the elements, because it took me 3 months of this thing sitting here in the driveway, working just kind of weekends here and there when weather permitted, and I didn't want to leave everything open and exposed for 3 months. Now, if I were to do it again, I would see if I can't get this inside the barn or somewhere and actually try to remove the fenders. I still wouldn't have been able to remove the cab, but if I got the fenders out of the way, I think I would have had much easier access, especially when it came to actually lifting the heads on and off. I would have been able to just be right here, lean over, pick them up, instead of having to balance on top of the core support and over the fenders on a 4-foot ladder. And if you've watched the videos of me doing this process, it was difficult. So another thing that I think I would have at least looked into would have been a topside creeper, because I spent a lot of time with this plastic off of the truck, kneeling on the core support, trying to get parts, get down in the engine, all that kind of stuff, and my knees were killing me. Now, I don't know how well topside creepers work. I've never personally used one, and I don't know how well it would work on a gravel driveway. I don't know if I could have just pulled it in place, left it sit there, and been able to work and not have to scoot it back and forth. And the other thing I don't know is how much they cost. I didn't look into them at all. I just got in here and started working. But that might be something you want to look into if you're going to do this. So now that we talked about things that I wish I kind of would have done or at least looked into, let's talk about things that really did work and helped me out a lot. The first thing was I bought a subscription to AllData. I just bought a year subscription just for this truck. I could not have done this without that. It was almost step-by-step directions on how to take it all apart and put it back together, all the torque specs, all the information you need. Highly, highly recommend you get something like that before you tackle something like this. I will say though, there were a couple things in there that I did not do in the order that they suggested, just because some of the parts were kind of over other parts. It made more sense to remove one part before the next part when I was supposed to remove the next part before the first part. I know that probably doesn't make much sense, but I did do some things out of order, so it's not perfect, but it helped a ton. Another thing that worked really, really well for me was getting a bunch of colored zip ties. I think I had like 14 different colored zip ties, and I used those to label all the electrical connections. I color coded them. So I knew purple went to purple. I knew yellow and purple went to yellow and purple. Most of the connectors seemed like they were all different and probably only fit together one way, but it just gave me extra peace of mind knowing that I knew every single connector was getting connected right back in the same spot. Because let's face it, these diesel engines have a ton of wires, a ton of connectors, and it was really, really great having that peace of mind. I didn't worry about labeling all of the hoses and stuff that I disconnected, because those, once you started putting parts in, you could just tell where they went because they were all pretty much pre-bent, and that was easy enough. I didn't need to label those. But the wire connections, that worked amazing. So another thing that really, really helped me out was I took a ton of pictures. If I removed a part, I took a picture. Remove another part, took a picture. And it really helped me when it came to rerouting all the hoses, rerouting all the cables, wires, all that stuff. If I had not taken those pictures, I don't know if I would have gotten everything back together and looking stock like I did. Another thing that really, really saved me that most people probably won't do or won't have, but I had video of everything coming apart. And when I was putting things back together, I actually pulled up my previous videos of taking it apart on YouTube and watched them to help me get this thing put back together. So if you're in this and you're going through, go back, watch the videos. It will really help you. So another thing I did to help me with putting this back together is I laid all the parts out in the order I took them off. I ended up having, I think it was 4 tables in the barn full of parts by the time I had everything apart. But I had them in sequential order of how I took them apart. So that way the last part I took out was the first part I put back in, and I could work my way down the tables and make sure I was getting everything in the order that I took it apart. And there's one more recommendation I want to make. If you're doing this, get rid of your normal head bolts. I mean, these things aren't reusable anyway because they stretch underneath torquing, so you'd have to buy new bolts. I highly recommend going with a stud. I did ARP studs, and for me, it's more peace of mind. I mean, they don't call putting in studs bulletproofing a diesel engine for no reason. So highly, highly recommend you spend a little bit extra, get rid of the bolts, put in studs. All right, so let's talk tools. I did have to buy some tools in order to get this done. And the one tool that I really, really, really recommend right off the bat that you pick up is a nice set or a set of swivel head ratchet wrenches. If I would have had these from the beginning, they would have saved me so much time. I didn't buy these until halfway through, and I had struggled with a bunch of hard to reach, hard to get at bolts. If I would have had these from the beginning, it would have been so much easier just to kind of bend that ratchet right where I want it and then be able to just ratchet back and forth instead of having to try to fight to get the box end on, loosen a little bit, take it back off, fight to get the box end back on. And there's a couple of those exhaust bolts that I spent probably 3 hours on getting one bolt out. When I had these, so much easier. The next thing I recommend is a fuel line, transmission line disconnection tool. I just went on Amazon and bought a master set, and it was really, really cheap. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but I remember looking at it going, that's it? Yeah, I'm gonna get it. I believe you only need the two sizes, the 3/8 and the 1/2 inch. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure those are the two sizes I used. You could go ahead and buy just those two sizes, but really the kit was pretty inexpensive. So the next kit I bought was the fan clutch removal tool. And this particular one works with an pneumatic hammer, air hammer. If you don't have one, this tool is not going to be helpful. You can remove the fan clutch without it. You just have to hold the belt tight and then get a wrench on the nut on the back of the clutch and break it loose while holding the belt tight. I'll tell you, putting this on, being able to pull the trigger and having the thing break loose, so much worth the money. And from what I remember, this wasn't very expensive. I just picked this one up from Harbor Freight, and again, I looked at the price, went, yeah, it's worth it. So I also picked up a large sanding block, and I used this on the actual head surface and the block surface where the two meet. Now, if you're going to send your head off to get machined and looked at, you probably won't need this for the head, but it's still not a bad idea to just use this to kind of sand along the whole flat side of the block, clean up all the old gasket material, and just get the surface prepped. You want something long and flat so that way you're getting a nice even sand across the block and you're not concentrating and creating little low spots and dips. So long block is a good thing to have. So on the front of the engine, when you remove some of the like AC compressor mounts and the alternator mounts, you're going to have to remove a couple studs to get the actual bracket off. And I ended up having to pick up a small set of female Torx sockets to get those studs out. So I had a really, really hard time removing some of the bolts from the exhaust manifold to the actual exhaust pipe. And what I ended up doing was buying a big 1/2 inch extension so I could stick it way up in the engine bay, and then a big 1/2 inch breaker bar. And I was putting everything I had into that to get those bolts loose. Thankfully they didn't snap, but they had to come out, so whether they broke loose or snapped, it didn't matter. I could replace them in the future if I had to. They just had to come out. And this is what I needed to get them out. Another thing you're gonna need is a good set of torque wrenches. And I ended up using all three of these on the job. I got my 1/4 inch inch-pound, my 3/8 foot-pound, and my 1/2 inch foot-pound. And I didn't have to buy these specifically for the project. I already had these. That being said, these two, not overly expensive. You start getting into ones like this, and they could run you a few $100s. That being said, it's probably still cheaper, and even if I had to buy this to do this job, I still would have bought this tool and still would have came out ahead. So again, in my mind, well worth the expense. So here's a tool that I bought before I started my head gasket project, but when I knew my head gasket project was coming up. And that's how I was able to justify purchasing it. I use this thing a ton on disassembly. I didn't use it much on reassembly just because I used the torque wrenches and the hand wrenches because I didn't want to over tighten and over torque and break things. But not a necessary tool, but sure was fun. So now that I kind of took care of the specialty tools and stuff that I had to buy for the head gasket replacement, let's just talk about some of the standard tools that I just have in my toolbox that we needed. Pliers. Gonna need an assortment of pliers, channel locks for taking hoses and stuff apart, screwdrivers for taking apart electrical connectors, unscrewing screws, that kind of stuff. You're gonna need a deep and shallow 12-point socket, 1/2 inch drive for when you put your head studs in and take your head bolts out. You need both the deep and the short because there's some where you can't get the deep socket and the socket wrench in, so you need the short one. But then the deep one's a lot easier on other bolts where you got like the valve springs and stuff in the way, so you can actually clear the valve springs and get a good stroke on the wrench. You're gonna need Allens, metric Allen sockets for taking off the rocker cover and the valve cover. The socket won't be able to get every single bolt, so you're gonna have to have an actual just regular Allen wrench, the little L one that you just stick in and you have to manually lift and twist and lift and twist to get a couple bolts out. It's a pain. It will work. You can do it. Just have patience. And then of course you just need a various amount of metric wrenches, sockets, And I think with that, you should be able to do a head gasket swap on the LML Duramax. So we talked about what I would have done differently. We talked about what worked really, really well. We talked about the tools I used. Now let's talk about cost. So the shop I took it to and got a quote from quoted me $8,000. I didn't have $8,000 laying around. Now, I am not a mechanic. I am mechanically inclined, but I'm not a mechanic. I had another car to drive. So it was okay for me to take my time and have this thing sit for 3 months on jack stands while I worked on it because I still had another vehicle I could use. Had I not had another vehicle, that would have weighed heavily on my decision. But I had that option, so I went ahead and decided to do this myself. Now there were some mishaps along the way, like I had to buy a second set of studs for the heads because I messed up the head gasket on one side, and there was some fuel lines that broke that I had to get replaced. But all said, I think I'm about $2,500 to $3,000 in parts and tools for this truck. Now, I don't know the exact number because I didn't save all the receipts and stuff, but I figure I saved around $5,000 doing this myself. Now, if I would have taken the head gaskets to a machine shop and had them machined, I don't know what the cost would be, but even on the high end, if it was $1,000, I still saved $4,000 doing this myself. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I enjoyed it. There was times that were super, super frustrating. And I can tell you, it would have been a lot easier to do if I was inside a shop or inside a garage instead of doing it out in my driveway. But it can be done. I proved it. We can do it. So hopefully you guys found this little review interesting, entertaining. You learned something. I really enjoyed going through and doing it, thinking about all the tools I had to buy, thinking about all the stuff I learned and did. It was really fun for me. Again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I just want to say thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.